great to be here with you. I'm joining you live from Hobbs, New Mexico. Wonderful amigos. I want to say a special hello to Governor Marco Salinas. He was such an incredible asset to us in our work and a real friend, but especially to all of my friends, my amigos and my amigas at the San Jorge Club in La Paz. So, I'm so happy to be with you and to be with them today because, as you know, I've come many times to Bolivia and I have developed a deep love for the people and for the beautiful landscape of Bolivia. Bolivia is a very special place to me, and I've had many wonderful experiences there. And my friends in Bolivia understand service above self as well as any place I've ever been.
Estamos ahora para hablar algo muy importante y muy interesante, que es la filantropía, la intersección con la promoción de la paz. ¿Qué es filantropía?
Well, Jimena, you know that the term philanthropy actually comes from a term philanthropos, which was coined in Greece in the 15th century. So it's been around a long time. And essentially what it means is to be benevolent, to love mankind, to give of ourselves.
¿Cuál es el panorama global de la filantropía?
Well, the literature tells us that there's probably around $1.2 to $1.3 trillion today around the world in foundations. There are, of course, other forms of charitable giving, and we'll go over that in a little while, but that's an awful lot of resources in foundations. About 2/3 of those resources are in U.S. foundations, but as you well know, there are many U.S. foundations that are involved globally. There are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 120,000 foundations around the world, 80,000 of which are in the United States. But we're seeing growing evidence of more foundation activity in other parts of the world. I was reading an article last night about efforts to get foundations started in Russia. The laws are different in different countries. Some countries encourage the development of foundations, some don't. And where they don't, they tend to grow slower because there aren't the same incentives in place to create foundations.
Está creciendo. Do you think that that philanthropy is growing?
Yes, as you know, I do a great deal of research in philanthropy. And what I am told is that the estimate is that the amount of assets controlled by foundations is likely to grow by 25 times in the next 2 decades alone. Now that's really amazing because it's as a result of an unprecedented intergenerational wealth transfer. But you also need to realize that while philanthropy has been around the world since the 15th century, it's only been around the United States for about 100 years. So it's a relatively new field. And what's really interesting is that most of the foundations and foundation assets have been created within the last 25 years. So it's a relatively new thing for much of the world. And the fact that it's ready to grow by 25 times means that we are going to see a huge change in the way philanthropy is exercised over this next 2 decades.
De todas las donaciones en general, ¿cuál es la porción, el porcentaje que viene de las fundaciones?
So it's interesting, despite all of the growth that has happened in the last 25 years, foundation giving as a percent of charitable giving is only around 12%. Corporate giving through corporate foundations and directly from corporations is somewhere between 2, sometimes as high as 5% in some years. But over 80% of charitable giving comes from individuals, people like Rotarians, people who give money personally to charitable causes. So that is a really interesting fact that while foundations have grown so much, they're still a relatively small portion of charitable giving.
Estamos aquí en una conferencia de Distrito de Rotarios y todos los rotarios nos preguntamos ¿qué tipo de fundación es la Fundación Rotaria?
Well, Jimena, there are 4 kinds of foundations around the world. There are private foundations which have endowments. They come into existence as a result of a one-time gift. Usually it's because somebody has passed away and left their assets for the creation of a foundation. And those foundations oversee those endowments. They invest them and generate a return that allows them to be able to grow their giving over time. Then there are community foundations that go out and fundraise, but they're specific to certain communities. There are corporate foundations which generally get funded from year to year as a percent of their profitability. Then there are what are called public foundations. And public foundations are those foundations that, while they may have some endowments, they are typically fundraising on a regular basis. And the Rotary Foundation falls into this last category because it's constantly dependent upon the fundraising of Rotary clubs and individual Rotarians, the generosity of individuals, and they actually go out and seek grants from other foundations, like, for example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, which has contributed dollar to dollar, every dollar raised by the Rotary Foundation for eradication of polio. Because the Rotary Foundation is a public foundation, it can go out and find creative ways to raise charitable contributions from a variety of sources.
Y queremos saber, en el caso de la filantropía, ¿cuáles son las tendencias emergentes en la filantropía?
Okay, well, there is a growing quest within the foundation world to find ways to magnify impact. And so that means looking for building better strategies. It means finding ways to collaborate with others to expand the amount of resources that are available. It even means growing philanthropy in non-traditional ways. So, for example, we saw with Mark Zuckerberg the creation of something that is not a foundation, but to which he has given a great deal of money. When you give money to a foundation, it's irrevocable. That means it can never come back to you. It always stays in the foundation. But when you give money to something like a limited liability charitable corporation, the money can come back to you if you can't find good enough uses for charitable purpose, and you don't have some of the restrictions that foundations have, because you can actually give money to for-profit companies, you can give it to individuals, whereas foundations traditionally cannot. But sometimes by giving money to for-profit entities or to individuals, you can find ways to actually grow impact. Because, as an example, and you and I have worked with women in Bolivia and in East Africa, helping them to grow micro-enterprises. Sometimes when those micro-enterprises grow to a certain level and they become profitable, not having the restrictions of a foundation will give you the ability to actually make loans and do other kinds of things that allow those micro-enterprises to grow and thrive, and then therefore lift more people out of poverty. So, Jimena, tell me a little bit about trends in Latin America.
La filantropía en Latinoamérica se está expandiendo, va más allá de lo que es simplemente la caridad y va en búsqueda de una transformación social e inclusive medioambiental. Antes se daba la creencia de que los gobiernos eran responsables de cuidar por sus ciudadanos y de darles todo el bienestar público, pero más y más organizaciones y filantropía y empresas inclusive están dando de su parte para crear unas sociedades más sostenibles. Y es lo mismo que está sucediendo en cuestiones de construir la paz para tener no solamente países más pacíficos, más sostenibles, sino una región, un continente más pacífico.
A trend emerging in is foundation giving for peace building. The literature says, and there was a recent study that was done by the Foundation Center, now known as Candid, that says that foundations give less money to peace building than any other single category of giving. So we have not figured out yet, and I know that's a big part of the discussion we're going to have here, the importance of peace-building principles in foundation grant making. You just asked me the question about emerging trends. And I told you that foundations are looking for ways to expand impact. Yet, they've not discovered the role of peace-building in expanding impact. So tell me for a moment, if you will, what is positive peace?
La paz positiva se refiere a aquellas actitudes, estructuras e instituciones que van a crear y van a mantener una sociedad más pacífica. La paz positiva se refiere a todos esos elementos que son positivos, como ser, por ejemplo, la educación, los recursos sostenibles, los recursos humanos, un gobierno que funcione adecuadamente. La filantropía como tal es muy importante para poder fomentar estos pilares de paz positiva.
Well, Jimena, thank you for that. And I will say that our club in Hobbs, New Mexico has learned that it is so important to have peace building as a part of whatever our international global work is. And because of that, you've been extremely helpful to our club as a Peace Fellow. We will not pursue a global grant, for example, without a Peace Fellow involved, because we've just learned that these Peace Fellows have knowledge and skills that can really grow the impact of what we do. So tell me, why is peace building important in grant making and in philanthropy?
Cualquier proyecto que uno realice es muy importante integrar estos principios de paz positiva. Uno, porque necesitamos que estos proyectos sean efectivos, que maximicen el impacto social. Y otro, porque queremos sostenibilidad, sostenibilidad de los mismos proyectos, que la gente esté dispuesta a ser parte del cambio, desde el principio hasta el final. Hay un dicho que siempre, que lo aprendí de T-Bob, que se trata sobre una broma de un psiquiatra, ¿no? Que pregunta cuántos psiquiatras se necesitan para cambiar un foco. Y la respuesta es solamente uno, porque el foco es el que tiene que cambiar. Y eso es lo que nos ayuda cuando incluimos estos principios de paz positiva, porque hacemos que estén todos incluidos desde el principio, sepamos las necesidades de la persona, de la comunidad, de las familias a las que vamos a servir. Como buen filántropo, uno tiene que saber y entender a la gente a la que va a servir.
Well, great. Maybe you could take a moment or two and just talk to us about how you have integrated principles of peace into some of our global grant projects.
Bueno, esa es una buena pregunta porque es un ejemplo para poder lograr esa efectividad de la que estábamos hablando. Desde el principio es, por ejemplo, respetar todas las perspectivas y todo lo que necesitan las personas desde el principio. El respeto es muy importante, el respeto a la cultura, el entender las tradiciones de estas comunidades, a la participación de los beneficiarios, como habíamos dicho desde el principio, porque son ellos quienes que al final van a lograr esta sostenibilidad, ¿no? La alta transparencia, y ese es, por ejemplo, un principio de paz positiva, porque tanto en países como en proyectos existen niveles de corrupción, y esa transparencia que uno ofrece en un proyecto es sumamente importante.
So, Jimena, I had mentioned a moment ago that one of the trends, unfortunately, in philanthropy is that foundations are not supporting peace building. But that's not the case in Rotary, is it?
Bueno, la organización Rotary está haciendo muchísimo esfuerzo en apoyar a proyectos específicos y relacionados a la paz, a la construcción de la paz. La organización Rotaria también, a través de todas sus otras áreas, está trabajando muchísimo en apoyar los principios de la paz positiva en cada una de las áreas con las que trabaja, desde lo que es, por ejemplo, el acceso al agua, lo que es la educación, lo que es la salud, y todo se refiere a construir sociedades más sosteniblemente más pacíficas.
Both believe very much in the worth and dignity of all people. And as I understand it, elements of positive peace are affirming to those ideas of the value, the worth of all people, creating conditions in which people can thrive, in which they are treated well. So we deal with issues like domestic violence or conditions in which people can't really sustain the lifestyles that they choose to live, that perhaps that they've been passed on for centuries. And positive peace creates those conditions in which people are affirmed rather than demeaned, and where they are supported rather than left empty.
Quiero añadir también, Bob, que todos estos elementos hacen que una comunidad, primero un país, una comunidad, sea más resiliente. Resiliente a crisis como esta, como la pandemia, a crisis, por ejemplo, de cambio climático, a crisis políticas, a crisis sociales, a todo tipo de crisis. Si existen este tipo de estructuras, instituciones y actitudes hacia la paz, es más fácil hacer frente a todas estas circunstancias.
Thank God for Rotary's role in providing leadership on these really important ideas, which I know that you believe are consistent with what the principles are of strategy for the United Nations in affirming people around the world. And we understand how incredibly important philanthropy and peace together are. Neither is complete without the other.
Muchas gracias a ti, Bob, por la participación y por enseñarnos qué tan importante es la filantropía.
Well, hasta pronto to all of my amigos y amigas.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here